the Pseudo Nerd Podcast.
Or a board game revolution, as I like to call it.
I've never heard you call it that, but
You've said it. You've now said it, I think 4 times, and it is the title of the rundown.
Teetering between dude and dork.
From a physics or realistic standpoint, it makes more sense than this Death Star that can just, do that.
These friends discuss everything from sports.
I hope you don't win a playoff game with your kicker scoring the most points.
To movies.
The whole idea of Hermione and Harry Potter, it's just like having the jock getting with the cheerleader to me.
To cheeseburgers.
Baconzilla is just an extra thing I'll have.
It's an added bonus, a little treat.
The 2 Baconzillas I get are the extra added treat.
This is the Pseudo Nerd Podcast with Josh Kaiser.
You come in there, scissor kick some people, do a spinneroonie, get tossed out.
Josh had it.
If you've never read the graphic novel and watched that, you walk away from it thinking about Batman and Batgirl instead of Batman and Joker.
And Kyle Hogan.
He's just bathing in his blood.
Get ready. The Pseudo Nerd Podcast starts now.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 59 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for May 5th, 2017. I am Josh Kaiser, and he is Josh Haddix and Kyle Hoagland, and we are your hosts for the Pseudo Nerd Podcast.
Why are you messing with us? What the heck was that about?
A little on us, huh?
Well, after our last conversation about, you guys always just being my special guests, I figured I'd try to work it in a little bit differently here.
We're not even good enough to. We're not even good enough to say hello anymore. That's what it comes down to.
Hi, hello, guys. Everybody. How you doing?
Hey. You can say hello now. I'm not holding you back.
Well, couldn't even prepare us for it, man. I was just so taken aback by this. It's 59 episodes of doing the same. Well, technically 58 episodes of doing the same thing, man. You gotta let us know.
Actually, more than that, because we do these PSs, if you will. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We like to be, spontaneous here at the Pseudo Nerd Podcast, so you never know what you're going to get. Even 59 episodes in, you're thinking, you know what? I kind of know what this routine is. Guess what? You're about to be shell-shocked.
Guess what?
Right?
Oh, man, dude, I see what you did there. That was a good one. See what I did there?
Yeah, because coming up in today's podcast, we will be breaking down the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past board game, which, of course, is another board game review, part of what we like to call here at the Pseudo Nerd Podcast, the board game revolution.
That is what we're calling it, apparently.
That's what Kaiser's calling it, apparently.
all I'm going to say is we had so much success, so many great responses, so much great feedback from our previous podcast where we broke down
so many refreshed pages by Kaiser.
Just so many hits. We thought, we'd go ahead and bring you another board game review, which we did go ahead and stream this past Sunday. So that if you guys had checked us out on Twitter, we were, posting about that, and we went and streamed it as part of the pseudo stream that Kyle does. So if you haven't checked it out, I believe, Kyle, there is an uploaded video for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was uploaded yesterday on YouTube. So yeah, I guess this is considered Friday. So then it's been up since Monday.
And
so there you go.
I actually just checked. It is up there, and with my click, it is up to 3 views, which is very nice.
There you go. So,
there you
go. So bump that up. Feel free if you guys are like, you know what, I want to see how this game's played first before I listen to the review. Go check us out, and you can find that link at pseudonerdpod.com. Kyle, is it going to be from there? And our YouTube page will be there, right?
The YouTube page should be on the website, or once again, we can always tweet out I can tweet out the VOD link just so you can go right to it. Either way, we'll pin it or something like that to the Twitter. That's probably the easiest way for people to see it.
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to check it out there, if you listen to the review and you're like, that sounds pretty good, or that sounds like an absolute train wreck, depending on how our review goes today. You can go check it out afterwards and see how our games went. We played a couple of scenarios of the game, and we're going to break that down here today for you guys. Give all of our thoughts. Give you a little background on how the game is played, as well as what we liked, what we didn't like, and then finally our overall review. So, strap in and Cowabunga dudes, let's do this.
Once again, welcome back, everybody, to obviously the reason why everybody's here, and that is to find out whether or not Haddix can make another comeback, being down 5-3 in the Test Your Knowledge segment. Obviously, this is about Teenage Ninja Turtles, so we're gonna go right into that. I hope you guys were doing your homework. I know you're out in Mizzou, Kaiser, but I hope you found some time to do a little bit of light reading on the subject.
I have the brains of Donatello, so I don't think I'm going to even need to, do any studying. I think I've got this down.
And Haddix is cool but rude, so let's hope he can get this done.
Give me a break.
So I've got I think it's overall 9 questions, but it's if we get to 8 and we don't need the 9th, then we don't need it. So
what if I get 5 right in a row? Then we don't even need to go past that, right?
Just stop right there, dude.
I guess the mercy rule can be put in, but I mean, for the sake of the PMPers, we can give them all the questions just so they learn something as well. So we'll give them we'll do the questions as long as time allows. So same format. It has been a rousing success. So the last person that won it was Kaiser. Kaiser, we'll let you decide whether or not you want to take a crack at the first question, or you want Haddix to be the one to have the option.
Let's do it. I'll take a crack at it.
All right. So, question number 1. Everybody's favorite sidekick the name is not April. Casey Jones. Obviously, he basically ran around with a big bag full of, things he found in a garage, to fight bad guys. But what was his trademark go-to weapon since the beginning of the comics?
I'm going to go with the hockey stick.
That is correct. That is 1 point for Haddix.
I swear to God, these all better be that easy. All right? That's all I'm saying.
Dude, like I said, mind of Donatello.
He's going to tell me, what's the real name of Master Splinter's dad's mom or something like that.
Hey, don't be a Raphael on us, all right, dude?
Jeez, I tell you.
Jesus, this is the first question. Calm down, guys. So, Haddix, here's your question. What is the one ingredient... Because we know these turtle boys love their pizza. But what is the one ingredient that the TMNT lore says that they cannot stand to have on their pizza?
Anchovies?
That is correct. See, you're doing all right. You're gonna do just fine.
That's because I'm a genius, but
all right,
still.
All right.
Well, speaking of geniuses, Baxter Stockman, Kaiser.
I was gonna say, here comes Baxter Stockman question. Yeah.
He constructed these iconic rodent-looking robots. What were they called?
Mausers.
That is correct. This is doing a lot better than the baseball one so far.
A lot better than the baseball. We're really showing our true colors, and they are green,
seriously.
Right?
So, Haddix, this one is yours. April O'Neil, the hottie with the body and the yellow jumpsuit. We know that her, as far as what we remember as kids, her occupation was she was a television news reporter. However, in the original comic, that was not her job. What was April O'Neil's original occupation in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic? Remember, for those who don't know the setup, if Haddix does not know, he can defer it over to Kaiser, and Kaiser gets a free crack at it. If he does not get it right, then it goes back to Haddix, and Haddix will get a multiple choice.
I'm going to have to defer because I think I know it, but I am not 100% sure. So I'm going to defer to Kaiser, see if he knows that. All
right. No multiple choice, Kaiser. What was April O'Neil's occupation in the original comic?
I'm actually not positive on this. I'm going to go she was an antique seller.
That is incorrect. I do appreciate the originality, sort of that answer.
I was about to say, if that was right, I was nowhere near correct with my guess.
If he nailed that, we would have just called this a contest
seriously.
right there. So, all right. So Haddix, that's incorrect. So Haddix, here are your answers. Was she a newspaper reporter, an assistant to Baxter Stockman, an undercover spy following Shredder, or was she unemployed?
The assistant to Baxter Stockman.
That is correct.
Yeah, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's right. The reason I went with antique seller is in the original movie, didn't she run an antique store like on the side or something, or her grandmother or mother or something owned that?
You mean like the original, like the...
That's like 1990 Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh,
Remember
God,
there's that building that burned down? There's that fire.
You might be right. You might be right, but I didn't think she took care of it, but it might have been in the family.
Yeah, that's why I kind of went with that guess. Like maybe it was a shout out to that or something. But
right.
As soon as I heard the Baxter Stockman, I was like, "Yep, that's it."
All right. So scores 2-2. Kaiser, this is yours. In The Secret of the Ooze, which personally was my favorite of the real life adaptation of the movies, who was the karate fighting pizza delivery boy who became a sidekick for the Turtles throughout the movie?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to pass. I don't know his name off the top of my head. I'm gonna need some multiple choice if Haddix doesn't get it.
Oh God, I don't. I guess I might as well take a stab at it.
Let's see how racist you can be.
Johnny.
Oh, I was hoping for something better than that. No, it's not Johnny.
See, I thought it was something like common like that. That's why I said that.
No. All right. So, Kaiser, I think you can get it when you hear it, but we'll see. Is it Kono, Nico, Naku, or Kino?
Oh, God, I know this.
Kino?
It is Kino.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that in a million years until I heard it. I would not have remembered that.
Well, so that's the advantage of getting the multiple choices. So scores 3-2, but everyone's gotten their questions right. So no one's in front of anybody yet. So Haddix, we're gonna get a little more difficult here now. These last couple are a little bit harder.
Hockey stick.
Damn. No. Who wrote? Now everyone remembers the cartoon theme for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, that's something you can't get out of your head, probably ever. But who actually wrote the theme? He was actually a very famous TV producer. Who wrote the theme to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Pastor Kaiser.
Oh my gosh. Let's go with... I'm drawing a blank on TV producers now. Jeff. I don't remember his last name, so we're gonna go with Jeff.
Well, it's not a Jeff. It's not a Jeff, but
I don't remember his name, so I'm just gonna say Jeff.
He's not a Wiggles. All right. So here's your multiple choices. Is it Chuck Lorre, Lorne Michaels, Joss Whedon, or Larry David? Who
Chuck
wrote
Lorre?
the theme? That is correct. Well done.
So there was two people I was trying to think of. Chuck Lorre was one of them, and the other was, who's the guy who did Full House?
Oh, I can't remember, man.
I thought it was Jeff something, and I was like, I
We'll
couldn't
look it
remember
up.
Chuck
We'll
Lorre.
look it
That
up.
would have been my other guess. But anyways, go ahead.
All right, so tied up. We're almost to the end here. Kaiser. Little did a lot of people know, there was actually a female Ninja Turtle that was introduced in the ill-fated Next Mutation series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What was her name?
I remember that there was a female. I couldn't tell you her name. Maybe the multiple choice will help me. I will pass it on to Haddix. And by the way, Jeff Franklin. Jeff Franklin.
Ah. Good old Jeff. So, Haddix, this is to you for a free answer.
Female Ninja Turtle.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with JBL.
You know, it'd probably be as close as anything else, but it's incorrect.
I do not know the answer to that.
Here are your multiple choice, Kaiser. Is it
All right.
Is it Milo, Venus, Sonia, or May?
Ooh, Venus?
That is correct. It is Venus.
All right.
Wow, what a guess.
So now this is
it was one of those. It was an educated guess. I felt like I had heard that.
Yeah. So scores 4-3. Everyone's gotten their questions right. This could be the turning point right here, though. Haddix. Teenage Ninja Turtles was actually a spoof off of what Marvel series?
Daredevil?
That is correct.
That is correct. Let me guess. Was that probably the Did You Know in your stupid ass list?
It's not going to be part of what I'm doing today, but in my research, I did find that. So that's how I knew. I did not know that until today.
I've known that for a while, yeah.
All right, now here's what I'm going to do. This is the final question. Whoever can say the answer first wins. We all have steady enough internet that this should be fine. But here we go. In 1988, all of the Ninja Turtles had their trademark, different colored headbands.
Bandanas. Oh.
Or bandanas, yes. But before 1988, they were all the same color. What is that color?
Blue.
Red.
It is red.
I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, the original Nintendo Entertainment Center system had the TMNT 1, and the front cover art has them all with red masks.
Look at that. So there you have it. So I will say this, guys. Well done at basically clearing this board. But unfortunately...
We may have taken a couple multiple choices, but we answered every one. So.
Yep. So it really just came down to, Kaiser was just a little bit quicker. His internet at that hotel is just a little faster. Also, he guessed right the first time.
That's true.
So overall, score is 6-3 in favor of Kaiser. Congratulations again. Probably the best showing, though, of the year. So well done to both of you.
Cowabunga, dudes. All right, so now that you guys know that we actually know what we're talking about when it comes to the Ninja Turtles, we're going to go ahead and start discussing the board game TMNT Shadows of the Past. When I kind of was looking and we were discussing doing another board game, I wanted to find – I'd like to find new games, one instead of reviewing a game that's been out for a long time. And through my, knowing that this was going to release the first week of May, I thought to try to find a game that came out late April. And I really wanted to get this game called Escape from 100 Million BC. However, it was looking like it may or may not be out in time for the stream, and I didn't want to risk it. So I kind of started looking, and the guy Kevin Wilson, he's a kind of a famous board game designer. He's worked on a lot of popular board games. Arkham Horror is probably one of his most famous. He's also worked on World of Warcraft, the board game, Doom, the board game, Game of Thrones, Civilization, the board game. So he's done a lot of video game and pop culture kind of game design. And I was kind of going through his Twitter feed because I'd been tweeting at him, and came across the fact that he had worked on a game, this Ninja Turtles game. So I'm like, oh, wow, Ninja Turtles, that'd be cool to discuss. So I kind of go back and look, find out this game basically came out just at the end of last year. So I thought we could go ahead and discuss it because it hasn't been out that long. So that said, we're going to kind of discuss a little bit about the background of the game itself. He worked closely with Kevin Eastman. So for those of you familiar with the Ninja Turtles comic and cartoons and all that, they were originally created by Eastman and Laird, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird. And so Kevin Eastman worked closely with Kevin Wilson on this game. So, it has a lot of it's buried deep in lore of the Ninja Turtles. And then they also had Tony Vargas, who was sort of an artist, 3D artist, to help on the production. The game itself was published by IDW Games, which is the Idea and Design Works. That company founded in 1999, and through my studies, I found that they published a lot of licensed games, Ghostbusters, X-Files, Star Trek, Transformers, G.I. Joe, et cetera, et cetera. And Haddix, I believe you said that they also publish a lot of comics. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, the first I came across it, they've been doing it for a while, but the first I came across it was I went to the comic book store on Wednesday, which is when the new comics come out, and there was a Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossover, and it was published by IDW. So I don't know if like DC just allowed them to use their character or whatnot, but after reading that series, they actually still write just the Turtles comics. There's just Turtles comics out there, plus a bunch of other things.
Sure.
But they're pretty good.
It looks like they have this company has a pretty good reputation, or must have good connections, because they do a lot of license related stuff. So they must, like you said, Batman, whether DC granted them the licenses or what, they must have a pretty good, they don't kill licenses, so they must have a pretty good streak or something to allow all these major names to be used for them. Now that said, this particular board game was a Kickstarter project, and you might ask why something with the Ninja Turtles license or the Ninja Turtles name needed a Kickstarter. And according to the Kickstarter page itself, they wanted to use it to reach stretch goals for the game's success. And they really did reach their stretch goals. They started in February of last year. They opened the Kickstarter, and they wanted to raise $250,000. They ended up at the end of the Kickstarter raising $862,000, which shows you how big a deal Ninja Turtles are, and how much the fans really wanted, to see a game made in this regard. They had over 6,000 backers, and with plans to ship in July, and like most Kickstarters, didn't ship until the end of October. And up until a couple weeks ago, I saw some people were still getting their Kickstarter games. So,
which seems kind of silly, since you were just able to get it right off of Amazon.
I know I was able to order it off Amazon, but that's kind of how that it is sometimes with Kickstarters.
So real quick on that note, I've never really done much with a Kickstarter or looked too much into it. Is it like do you basically buy the game early, and that's why you're saying people didn't get theirs that
don't even think of it like buying. Don't think about it like you're buying the game early. What you're doing is you're giving money for the production of the game, and if you reach a certain amount of money to give, like there could have been like something where like you might have just dropped $20, and then one of the things might have been like, oh, you got yourself like a Ninja Turtle poster or something to commemorate, and then if you spent like $60 or $40, you get like an early bird of the game. So it's not even so much like what a lot of people when they do Kickstarters, you don't want to think of it as, hey, I bought the game, now I want my money back. It's more of you're funding the project, and then they're going to thank you by giving you benefits based on the amount.
Yeah,
and that could
depending on the level of money that you put in, there are certain, you may get the game, you may only get a giveaway. You might get your name in the booklet as a thank you, or you might get all of them if you've donated X amount or more. There's always certain levels.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. So these people obviously spent the amount to get the game and had not been shipped yet. Now that said, the games, I bought it off of Amazon. It can be pretty much found anywhere online right now. Depending on where you're going to get it, it's going to be at least $60, and I saw it at upwards of $90. But Amazon Prime, I got it for $60, so you can get it right around there if you look. That said, the game itself, it is a miniature game. So if you've never played a game with miniatures, think of sort of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of setup where you have figurines, little plastic figures that represent the Ninja Turtles, Shredder, the Foot Clan, Thugs, whoever, and they're on the board, and there's different maps that you're going to be on with different terrain and things like that. And the object of the game is you're following a comic book story, and every scenario or campaign has an objective for the hero and the villain's end. And if you're the Turtles, you're going to try to stop the Foot Clan, or do objective A. Well, meanwhile, the Foot Clan and the villains have objective B to accomplish, and it's sort of a head-to-head, but it's like a head-to-head where the Turtles are, you are cooperative. So you may be playing, it's 2 to 5 players, so you may have up to 4 people each playing their own turtle against one villain. And, the game itself, so, what comes with the game, there's plenty of different board pieces as far as, maps, if you want to think of it like that. I think there's over 40 figurines, if not more than that. The turtles, the Foot Clan, the thugs, and then the main villain, your shredders and your splinters in there, all that kind of stuff. That said, so, before we get into the rules and the gameplay and all that, and then more that kind of detailed stuff, what were your guys' initial thoughts when, I even brought this game up to you, as well as, when you first maybe saw everything kind of laid out?
I know for me, it kind of did seem similar to Dungeons and Dragons, which I haven't really played much of. As a matter of fact, the only time I've ever really played was me, you, and a couple of our buddies, Kaiser. And we didn't really get that deep into it. But it did seem kind of like a twist of that mixed with kind of, a Turtles theme, which I was all for because I love both of those things. So it definitely did intrigue me when we brought it up. And it looked really cool from the pictures that were out there. So,
yeah, obviously from what I could see, I was definitely the remote player when we were playing. It seemed like there's not a whole lot of board. It seems like you turn it in different ways to create the different scenarios, or are there a bunch of boards?
There's probably at least 8 or 10 board tiles, and they're front and back. So you have definitely a bunch of different combinations of maps to create from it. So there is a pretty good amount.
I gotcha. I think my first impression of it really was there's a lot of rules, but at the same time, it's actually really easy to get right into it. There's not a whole lot of questions to ask. I was afraid that this was going to be like 40 minutes of us just going over the rules and making sure that what we were doing was. It seemed like it was pretty straightforward. I don't think it. I think it hit both sides of. I think if someone's a fan of the Ninja Turtles and want to play a board game, as long as you do a little bit of reading and kind of get the gist of the rules, you'll be fine. But at the same time, for the more hardcore board game player that likes the intricacies of a well thought out and I guess just premise of playing the game. Then I feel it also pleases them as well. It's not too over the top, but at the same time, there's a decent amount of intelligence needed if you want to master it.
So that brings up a question: have either of you played a miniature style board game before? Anything in that kind of genre where you play with the miniatures and you're kind of strategically moving around a board with combat, that kind of thing in a board game format, or no?
I mean, outside of Risk, I've played Warhammer, but maybe only like once or twice when I was back at home and they had that quest bar where you could play those things there or whatever. Is that what it's called? The quest?
Yeah. Quest. The one in Lakewood? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. So that's as far as miniatures and figurines and stuff like that. Warhammer is probably the closest thing, but everything you kind of did, kind of said, kind of describes Risk to an extent.
But I think telling people who might not be familiar with the miniature style games, if you say it's like Risk, I would not put those two in the same category.
Well, at the same time, you are attacking and you're rolling the dice in order to see how much damage and defense. So the certain things you do during turns is very risque. Get it?
Nice.
I'll give you that. That was.
So, and Haddix, how about you? Have you played anything?
I mean, like I said, the closest I've gotten is a Dungeons and Dragons, but other than that, no, I haven't played any type of other miniature game or anything like that.
Okay, and I've played a. Betrayal on the House on the Hill is probably the closest to a miniature style game with dice rolling combat that I've played, and it's much more basic in those regards. It's not really the style of the game. So I was very intrigued. I've been wanting to play a game in this kind of level context. Mansions of Madness is a game I've been looking at for a while, which has aspects of this in it. So that said, we don't have a whole lot of history in the miniature board games to compare it to. So for those of you who maybe have had a lot of experience with that, we may say things that sound basic to you or sound advanced to you. I don't know, depending on where you've come from, but that's sort of where our background is.
And if you've got any kind of idea or thoughts on that, by all means, when this comes out on YouTube or you want to discuss on Twitter about how this game compares to anything you've played, by all means, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. That said, I was pretty excited to play this. I've been wanting to play this. Like I said, I want to play this kind of style of game for a while now, and having the Ninja Turtles aesthetic to it, I think, really excited me. It's kind of cool to be able to play a game. It brings back that nostalgia. Having Ninja. I don't know about you guys, but even kind of preparing for this podcast and playing that, I kind of got psyched up for the Ninja Turtles, and I'm like, I kind of wanted to go watch some old television shows, that kind of thing. I got back into that. I got that Ninja Turtles itch.
I hope you didn't want to watch the old cartoon, because that's one thing I made a decision a long time ago that I'm going to let that nostalgia just stay nostalgia, because, honestly, the cartoon's kind of hot garbage. Honestly, the new one I'm actually really getting into. I've been actually watching the new, the Nickelodeon version, and it's really not that bad.
Oh, I'm sure there's definitely the rose-colored glasses from back then, or the red-colored bandanas, if you will, right?
Oh, this guy just driving that knife in deeper, or the sai, if you will.
The sai, yeah. We're gonna have a lot of turtle puns as we go through the rest of this, but that's sort of our overall thoughts. And in our next main segment, we will break down the gameplay.
Ladies and gentlemen, us here at the Pseudo Nerd Podcast would love to thank you for the outpouring of emails, tweets, written letters to Sierra Mist about getting their sponsorship back on this show. And there was so much that they're back. So, without further ado, the List Twist List segment brought to you by Sierra Mist. Insist on the twist. What do you guys think about that?
It only comes with 99% lying.
It's blissful, if I ever heard it.
I just miss all of the rhyming. So here's the thing. There's nothing bad about Sierra Mist being a part of this. If Sierra Mist really knew, and I know that there are plenty of people there that at the company that do listen to this podcast, and I'm sure they actually appreciate the nod.
Oh, sure, I'm sure. Well, getting into it, I'm kind of glad Hoagie brought this up a little bit at the end of that last segment. We all love the Turtles, and I think at least us three and people our age kind of relate more to the cartoon from the 90s. So while I was thinking about that, I decided to look up other things from the 90s, and I came across this list on BuzzFeed. They actually did a poll, and it is the 12 best things about the 90s according to 90s kids. So let's dive. Let's delve.
90s kids?
So here's the thing. Here's the caveat to this, if you will. One, anyone could have voted. So I went to the poll, even though the poll is over.
So not just 90s kids.
Yes. Although I guess, they would assume, hey, if you're picking one of these, you've obviously seen them. So maybe that means you're around in the 90s, whatever. So there is one caveat. The other one is this wasn't an open-ended question where people wrote in their answers. And then some of them were between 2, some of them were between 4, and you had to pick one. So again, wasn't open-ended where you could pick whatever. So anyway, let's dive right in. You guys will see kind of the gist of it here.
Okay.
Number one,
is this not a contest or anything? Am I not going against Kaiser?
No, this is just kind of a list, if you will. Okay. Hence the List Twist podcast. So, number one on this list was the best 90s TV show, and at 28% was Friends.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
I can't argue that.
For what it's worth, what else was on the list? Boy Meets World, Full House, Saved by the Bell, Buffy, Seinfeld, Sister, Beverly Hills 90210, and Dawson's Creek.
I don't know why I'm laughing about Sister.
I feel like Sister does not belong on.
No. Sister's on there just because of the infectious theme song. That's all.
And how I read those were the order they came in after Friends.
Wow,
So-
Boy Meets World was number 2. You know what? I'm surprised that I'm not. It is a it's probably the most underrated show of the 90s, in my opinion.
But I wouldn't have put it at number 2 on that. But
Yeah. Again, those were the only shows on the poll, so it's not like they're if you're like, oh, what about this show? Like
sure.
It just wasn't on there. So, all right, number 2, and I want your guys' votes on this real quick. Who is better, NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
In the 90s, Backstreet Boys.
Yes,
for sure.
Kaiser, 53% Backstreet Boys.
I feel like NSYNC didn't really come out to being like really prevalent until we were like in 8th, 9th grade, and that was 2000. So
that's fair. Number 3, 90s pop princess.
Number this is not even close.
Number 1 at 75%, Britney Spears.
Yeah.
2 at 19%, Christina. 3 at 5%, Mandy Moore.
I feel bad for Mandy Moore.
Number 4 with 58% of the vote, 90s heartthrob, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, that's bullcrap. Jonathan Taylor Thomas, number 1 in my heart.
In order, next, JTT, Freddie Prinze Jr., Usher, Joshua
Raven.
Jackson, and Devin Sawa, who I don't even know who that is.
good old Devin Sawa. He played. Did you ever see Tom and Huck, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer with JTT?
Oh yeah. Okay,
wasn't Devin Sawa the other guy? Or no, maybe not. That might have been Brad Renfro.
I'm not sure.
Devin Sawa was
in Casper, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Like,
he was Casper.
Okay.
He almost looked like a young Nick Carter from Backstreet Boys. He had that same haircut.
Yep, he did have that same haircut.
Yeah, I did not know who that is. All right, number 5. Best 90s Nickelodeon cartoon. Okay. 47% Rugrats.
Okay, yeah.
I think I would say Rugrats.
Followed by Hey Arnold, Doug, Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, and then Real Monsters.
Okay.
I appreciate that Real Monsters is on there. That's a good nod.
I think they just had to put that on there.
Number 6, the worst. Kaiser, you got to tell me how many of these you had. Number 6, the worst guys trend, with 44% of the vote, Frosted Tips.
Check.
All right, the next one, Jinko Jeans.
Check.
The next one, I don't know about this one. The next one, Looney Tunes gear.
You got to tell me you had like a No Fear shirt. Do you have like a No Fear shirt? That
Wait. Looney Tunes gear is next. Hold on.
I may have had like one shirt with Bugs Bunny or something on it, but not that.
Well, then check.
I had Taz. I had
check Taz.
Tasmanian
Yeah,
Taz.
Taz was huge.
Check.
We'll check that. The next one, a hemp necklace.
I may not have had.
I feel like you got a free one if you spent enough money in American Eagle back in the day.
I didn't spend a lot of money in American Eagle. That's a no check for me.
Okay, no check. We'll get No Fear T-shirt.
I never had a No Fear T-shirt.
Oh wow, I actually have one of those, or some of those. And last, and this made me think of Jason Militia.
Well, I was very scared, so that's why I had a.
So you had Fear T-shirts.
I had Fear. Yeah.
The last one is wearing an unbuttoned shirt over a T-shirt.
Check.
I feel like everyone did that. Like that was just that's just what you did.
Anyway. And Jason did that with a wife beater. All right, he didn't have a T-shirt underneath that.
I mean, I did that as well too. So.
So this one's not as funny to me, but worst girls trends. Number 1 was popcorn shirts, which I don't even know what that is, but platform sneakers, blossom hats, tattoo choker necklaces, butterfly clips, and Tommy girl gear.
What's wrong with Tommy girl gear? I feel like that was actually good on. Actually, they look pretty good with that on. Blossom man.
I
mean, to say that's a bad trend.
In the 90s.
I mean, you either wore that or you looked like a stand-in in like 10 Things I Hate About You movie. You're just like, and the blossom hats were also on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 8. We'll kind of run through the rest of these. Best kids movie of the 90s. 21% vote, which I agree with. The Lion King. After that, Home Alone, Toy Story, The Parent Trap, Mrs. Doubtfire, Hook, Matilda, Jumanji, The Little Rascals, Casper, and Harriet the Spy.
Harriet the Spy and
Harriet the Spy was 1%. So
and what was the Parent Trap? I think I was too old for Parent Trap.
Yeah. Dumbest fad of the 90s at 54%. Pogs. Yep.
Nice.
Following that, slap bracelets and Beanie Babies.
Okay, fair enough.
Check for on my side.
Oh, yes. Number 10, the 90s toy you missed the most at 42%.
Oh, the virtual pets have to be on there. Yeah.
Following that, Super
Furby.
Soakers, Skip It, American Girl Dolls, Moon Shoes, and Crayola Magic Scent Crayons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of a random.
What did you say, Kaiser? Was the one you said?
I said Furby. Is that later?
No, that's 90s, but I feel like that was a fad for a year.
That's true. Yeah,
That was kind of like a Tickle Me Elmo of the year, type of thing.
Right.
So number 11, the most missed discontinued food at 28%, Rice Krispies Treats cereal.
And that is damn true.
Yeah, absolutely. I can
say
go for some of that.
That is, and it's followed by Shark Bites, Heinz Easy Squirt Ketchup, High C Ecto Cooler, which is delicious, Orbits, and
that came back
Crisp.
for a period of time.
Yeah, I think it came back when these new Ghostbuster movies came out. Although the movies did so bad, I feel like there
was the Heinz the squirt ketchup. Was that the one where you had like purple and green ketchup?
Purple ketchup?
Yeah, it was a different color one. Yep. And number 12, the last but not least, the best teen movie of the 90s goes to Clueless, 38%, followed by 10 Things I Hate About You, She's All That, Cruel Intentions, I Know What You Did Last Summer, or IKWYDLS, Never Been Kissed, Empire Records, The Craft, and Can't Hardly Wait.
See, I'm sad that Empire Records is so low.
Underrated movie.
I grew up with that movie.
So that was the list. So that was the 12 best things about the 90s, according to 90s Kids, although anyone could have voted, like we pointed out earlier. But a little nostalgia there for you guys. So
before we end this segment, I just want to throw out, I went and looked at Devon Sawa's IMDb page. Forgot he was in Little Giants. Little Giants was the other.
Yeah, he was the love interest of Icebox.
Right. So it was Little Giants and Casper. Those were the two big movies. Then, of course, he was in Now and Then. After that, he he's done things. He was in Idle Hands. He was in Eminem's Stan video at one point. Final Destination.
He peaked in the 90s then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, big time. Early 90s. And now he's actually in a television show called Somewhere Between, which actually is in pre-production. So he is going to maybe make his big return there. He's in 10 episodes of Somewhere Between. So look for that.
Good for you, Devon Sawa.
All right, so let's get into the gameplay now. For those of you who are interested, and maybe you have seen us play it, maybe you haven't yet. And we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier when we were discussing our initial thoughts. But the rules, I think, are pretty easy to get into. And the idea is you're going to split into two sides. One person's going to play the role of the villain. And then the rest, whoever you have left over, if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 other players, they are going to play the Ninja Turtles.
So on that real quick, Kaiser, was it a 5-person max game?
It is a 5-person max game.
Okay.
2 to 5 players, yeah. So, okay. And honestly, I don't think you could really play with any more people as we kind of get into that. And the reason being is, the role of the Turtles, if you have 4 players each playing a turtle, that's pretty much max it out for you, because you each are going to, as a turtle, you have action dice that you're going to roll. And the action dice will initiate all of your combat and strategy for the round. You will either you roll skateboard for movement, you'll roll either ranged or melee attacks, and you can also roll defense and your special die, which is also a defensive or offensive attack. And meanwhile, the villains will have the use of a deck of cards built specifically for that particular scenario. It's a 25-card deck that you're going to be putting together, and each scenario has will tell you how many of each particular card for each particular villain player out on the board. And every scenario is going to be different, and you're going to follow the scenarios to in the guidebook, there's going to be a scenario to follow, and it's going to basically set out the board. Here's where the pieces are going to go. Here's where everyone starts, and here's your objectives. And then the map itself is going to be built with different obstacles, terrain, and you'll have your objectives. So, for instance, we played 2 different campaigns in ours, and both the objectives were for the villain to escape, in one way or another, and the turtles were trying to either KO as many of the villains as they could, or KO a particular villain, as the one scenario took place. And basically, at that point, you're going to take turns rotating. One Ninja Turtle is going to go, then the villain goes, then a turtle, then a villain, back and forth until 8 turns have taken place to complete a round, and then you rinse and repeat. So it's very strategy oriented, and what I guess I could say, guys, is you both played the turtles. It was easiest with Kyle being playing through the computer on Skype with us, for him to side with Haddix, and Haddix, you controlled all the dice rolling, much to the chagrin of Hoagie, I think, at times. But you guys were able to work together to kind of form a strategy. And so why don't you guys kind of go through, your play style, what you guys kind of did as the Ninja Turtles, as the heroes in this, in our scenarios that we played.
Like Hoagie kind of alluded to earlier, it's not a real difficult game as far as the concept of it and what you do each turn. You roll your certain die to do this, certain die to do this, make your moves, that kind of thing. The strategy part of it, I think, comes as you play the game more. The first scenario was just kind of a cluster. Had you not kind of given us a little bit of hints because you had already played it once, I feel like it would have been over even quicker than it was.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, in our review of and breakdown of everything, we've only played the first 2 scenarios. There's plenty of scenarios to go forward, and I think the game is built in a way to sort of hold your hand early on and get more difficult and more involved as you go further into the game. So, scenario 1 is not going to be this crazy all-out battle with all kinds of strategy and movement and terrain and obstacles. Instead, I have a bunch of little, easy-to-kill minions, and my goal is I need to run 3 of them off the board. Well, meanwhile, you guys' goal was to kill at least 8 of them, and KOing at least 8 of them, because it's a Turtles game. You don't kill people; you just knock them out. And I feel like it was developed this way. Is like each campaign is going to get a little bit harder, a little bit more strategy involved. So I will say it's worth noting that we didn't play enough yet to get into some of the more I would feel more involved scenarios. I think you guys would agree with that.
So I feel like overall the gameplay is fairly simple. Not too simple that it's boring, but simple, whereas the game kind of rotates around your strategy. So whether, Hoagie and I strategy together, or if you're playing, one person, your strategy. And I feel like any strategy game, the more you play it, the better feel you get for the game, the better you'll probably be at like if we played both of those scenarios again, I feel like Hoagie and I would do a lot better. Just because we kind of know what to expect now, the gist of the game.
Right.
We kind of learn the importance of making sure that Donatello's not sitting behind an air conditioner for the entirety of a whole game.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you guys spend an entire you couldn't move half of your characters basically that first round because you forgot that you didn't get a skateboard out there.
Yep.
And they can't move without that. So Donatello sits behind an air conditioning unit for an entire round.
Yeah, so it's the gameplay of you roll each of the turtles, ability die like you spoke of earlier, and you can pick those. There's some facets where you can re-roll those if you want, and then you arrange your turtles so they can share, and that's all very easy. A very easy concept.
Very easy concept to learn, yeah. And I like the concept of being able to share the dice.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Michelangelo can share his dice with Donatello. And I love that they incorporate, this is probably the influence of Kevin Eastman on it. They incorporate Raphael. He doesn't play well with others, so he doesn't, they don't share dice with him.
Although he shares with them, so it's like
he does share with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very cool concept, and the strategy part of it, I feel like, would have come as we got better at the game or played the game longer.
Definitely, and it's worth noting that I think there's 4 total books of scenarios, and I think it works out to 16 total scenarios, maybe 20. And I think that's I think it's 16, and so there's a lot of variation, and like I said, I think as the game gets further into it, I know the next scenario we're going to play involved all of a sudden trying to avoid security cameras, which are on the board, and what happens if you get caught in there. So there's more strategy. Line of sight becomes an issue. So there's definitely, each level adds to it. There's more stronger villains that appear. Eventually you're going to be fighting Shredder, so you can tell the game, kind of much like any good video game, it doesn't start right out balls to the wall. Let's get you used to this combat idea, then let's get you to introduce you to this aspect of it, and then so on and so forth. So I really do appreciate that the game, that you could start a new game, and really I think it doesn't take very long for you to be able to introduce that to a new player, as long as you have somebody at the board who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think as far as combat goes, real simple concept. I mean, it's going to be, you're rolling dice, and based on your attack and how much, what your attack is and how many bonus attacks you get, you roll that many dice, and then your dice are either a miss, a hit, or a double hit. And it's as simple as, if you roll 4 hits and I roll 3 defense, 4 minus 3, I take 1 hit, and my life is adjusted accordingly. So very simple concept there, but
very similar to once again, like I said, very similar to Risk, where you have an attack and a defense, and you can take pieces off from from the armies and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a simple concept there with the combat. But what did you think about combat? I thought it was enjoyable, the combat.
I didn't enjoy the part where Haddix was rolling, but other than that, once again, very simple idea. It's either a hit, a double hit, or a miss. There's nothing really to. There's strategy involved in the fact that each of the clan members and each of the different turtles have particular strengths and weaknesses, attack power and defense and things like that. Where one of them, like each of them, has their own special abilities. Where one has a better range attack, one has a better melee attack. And the foot soldiers, some have better defense, and you can play cards where you can increase the defense, at a moment's notice. Well, maybe not a moment's notice, but you can buff your Foot Clan soldiers with cards, also making it a little bit more difficult to try and clear the board.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, I'm glad you brought that up, while the Ninja Turtles have action dice that they roll and are utilizing and sharing amongst each other, the villain plays it differently. I mentioned the deck of cards. The deck of cards are unique to the particular villains that are in play for that scenario. And then on the villain's turn, I was the villain, so I played 2 cards every turn. And I activate certain villains with that card for that particular turn. And I might give them movement buffs. I may give them an ability to attack that turn, or whatever. And then they may have a universal overlying defense buff or something like that stays in play as long as the cards are in play, and they rotate out. Which we're not going to get into the full details of the game, but it was kind of a unique way to play. And that's another nice aspect of this game is. You guys are playing the heroes this time. You get to roll the action dice. I'm playing with cards. Maybe next time I play the hero, one of you play the villain, and then you get to see. It's almost like a different way of playing the same game, just from the other side, in just how you implement your actions. And I think it's fun, instead of having just villains have action dice and the turtles have action dice, to be able to have 2 different ways to implement your actions. I think is a unique way of going about the game.
Yeah, I do think that aspect was designed very well, especially since as a villain, in the second round you were controlling like 8 to 10 different guys at once. So, if you were rolling for each person, it would take forever. So it was very well thought out.
Exactly, because you're right. At one point, I think I had spawned on there about a dozen guys, and if I had to roll dice for every single one of them, it would have been overwhelming.
Yeah.
Instead, I play a card, and I can choose. The cards are anywhere from 1 to 3 villains that I get to, depending on the card, and those are the ones I'm activating for that turn and that card. So it was it is a lot easier to manage that way, and I think it was a fun way of playing it, and I wish we were able to play more campaigns so we could talk about some other various combat scenarios and styles, as opposed to the 2 that we played where really I'm going to run away from you guys and you're going to try to stop me.
Yeah, that would have been nice to be able to do that, but time constraints and all. So maybe we will when the one of the expansions come out. So
well, and it's worth time constraints. I'm glad you brought that up because that'll probably be a question that people are going to ask. How long did these games take? I think the initial scenario took us all of about 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe. And as far as the second one probably took a little bit longer. And depending on, some of that depends on the cards and the breaks that you get, I guess, in rolling and how quickly people take their turns and things like that. But I would say an average game is probably going to take 45 minutes to maybe an hour and a half, depending on how involved they are. I don't know if you guys think that's a pretty good estimate.
Right.
I could. Yeah.
What I know that the first game we played was actually very, very fast, and that might have been by design, just to kind of get like a feeler.
Yeah, and I think that it's a very intro style scenario, and I even watched some people play it online on another YouTube video, and their game went about 12 minutes or something like that. So it's I think by design it just kind of gets you get your feet wet to how the game is played, to the basics of combat, that kind of thing. So it's a good way to get you into the game, but it goes quick. And I would not use the first scenario as a point to a reference point for how all the other scenarios are going to play out by any means. And that said, I don't know if there's anything else about the gameplay that you guys want to discuss. That maybe I forgot about, as far as it's worth noting that there are obstacles in terrain, and you have to take that into consideration when you're moving your pieces around. You're on top of buildings, you're down below, and you need to either climb up fire escapes or climb down, or you can jump down onto a bag of garbage or something like that to do it, or otherwise you're going to take fall damage. And meanwhile, there's line of sight. You can't Donatello was sitting behind an air conditioning unit. He's not going to be able to, throw a shuriken out at somebody, and he's not going to be able to, attack somebody from, far away. And I can't swing a sword and hit you if you're not standing next to me. So things like that, common sense kind of stuff. And, you got to use your terrain accordingly. I think there was a neat little concept. It didn't play out that way, but I think at one point you could have, skateboarded across grinded along a rail and hit any villain along your way as an attack. So kind of unique ways of being able to utilize your environment as well in the combat.
I feel like does it I understand that every time that you win, like I say, if you're like the bad guys and you win, the next scenario may be something that's more in your favor. Like maybe the next objective is you need to do something 6 times, whereas if you had won the scenario before, maybe it's only 5. Do you notice if any of those scenarios where if the bad guys win a lot, do they kind of like throw the turtles a bone in case whoever is just doing it just not having a good time?
That's a good question. I didn't look far enough ahead. You're right, as far as whoever wins the previous scenario gives a boost to that team in the next one. But from what I read doing my research ahead of time, it sounds like the buffs, if you want to think of it like that, or the advantages to that particular team going into the next round aren't crazy enough to completely hinder or cripple the other team in the next round. It's enough to give them a slight advantage, but not enough that you're going to be like, we just can't keep. It's just not going to be like snowball effect. So like if the villains win 4 in a row, all of a sudden it's like now all the opponents out here are super shredders, and the turtles are going to come out without any weapons. Like it's never going to be. It's just like minor little buffs one way or the other. So I don't think it changes if you go villain, 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 or hero, hero, hero. I think it's just their predetermined setup, and it's just like minor buffs in any particular game. So it was a good question, though. And I think that's going to be it for about the gameplay. And coming up in our last main segment, we will go ahead and give our final thoughts, review the game overall, and let you guys know what we did and did not like about the game. All right, let's do with our great debate topic of the week. And if you guys recall, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, our great debate topic was: are you in favor or not in favor of shortening the baseball season? And a whopping 71% of you said no, keep it as is. 29% are smart and agreed with me that we need to shorten that season.
Oh.
Yeah. As always, remember that you can go to @PseudoNerdPod on Twitter and vote for all of our great debate topics. And then sometimes, as we have currently, if you follow us on Twitter, we did release an off-week Twitter poll in regards to the NFL draft, which has gotten a lot of traction as well. So always appreciate the feedback from you guys on there. And if we ever put out a poll topic that you don't agree with either one, feel free to comment and leave us, let us know what you think. Hey, you know what? I don't agree with either of those, and this is the one I want. And this week's great debate, sometimes we go head to head. This one's going to be a group discussion, and it's also going to be one that we will want your feedback on for sure. And that's our favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain. Obviously, you love the Turtles, you love everything that they have. But the villains were always so unique and fun, and some of them are a little more badass, some a little more comical. And I think, guys, I just wanted to spend this week, getting our thoughts and discussing, our favorite villains. Obviously, you can go with the most famous Shredder, and he has a lot of reasons to be your favorite villain. But I'm curious to see, guys, if I had to ask you, what are your favorite villains in the Ninja Turtles? What are your initial thoughts?
I mean, I think Shredder has to be number one for everybody, right? I feel like he was one of the coolest villains in any TV show or cartoon from back then, and probably still holds a little true till today. Better than any of the villains in the MCU. Am I right, guys?
I mean,
you are right.
It's sad because it's true. No, anybody that could be portrayed by Kevin Nash and voiced by Uncle Phil, he's going to be the top guy in our hearts.
That's true. Now, just to let people know, those are two different iterations of Shredder that you're discussing.
Yes. When Diesel was Shredder, he was not voiced by Uncle Phil.
He was Super Shredder. He was Super Shredder, right?
He was Super Shredder, and Uncle Phil was the Ninja Turtles cartoon. So
yes.
Just so people are aware. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Shredder is, to me, if I had to rank like my favorite villains in any iteration of any show, movie, comic, whatever, Shredder's got to be right up there. Is just, he was such a cool villain. He was, the way he was, his costume, and he was always kind of a badass for that cartoon. While it's a children's cartoon where the Foot Clan are kind of imbeciles, and Bebop and Rocksteady, who we can discuss here in a second, are kind of idiots themselves. Like, it was nice to have, he was always Shredder was kind of scary as a kid, especially in the movies. I always thought he was kind of a scary dude.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought
Good.
Sorry, I was just going to say when I grew up, I really didn't get into Teenage Ninja Turtles until a couple years when I was getting into G.I. Joe, and I always I was so into Cobra Commander. I thought he was such a cool bad guy, and then I watched Ninja Turtles, and I'm like, this is basically Cobra Commander, but a ninja and way cooler. And
Cobra Commander always was kind of like, he was almost like the I can't think of the guy from Inspector Gadget.
Oh, Dr. Claw.
Dr. Claw, where they're always like, I'll get you next time, and they get screwed. They're almost like comically, almost like Team Rocket blasting off again kind of endings for them. Where I don't think Shredder kind of had that, but not he wasn't embarrassed as much as like the other guys, the other villains were.
Well, he always ninja'd his way out. He was more, he was definitely more like Dr. Claw, where if he was being cornered, he just threw down like a smoke bomb and got the hell out of there.
He did a spinneroonie and got tossed out of the ring, right?
Nice.
The other thing, real quick, for Shredder's, on the side of Shredder, if you will, the deep, rich history he had with Splinter. Like, they always kind of,
definitely
it's such a good background. It wasn't just a random bad guy that popped up and then, they just always fought the Turtles. There's a lot going on there that kind of always ties back to their former selves.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it was, you always appreciate, it's the Joker to the Batman. It's the Shredder, Splinter, and the Turtles. I mean, he is their first enemy and always has that, like you said, that rich history, as opposed to maybe some of the other ones. So let's take Shredder out of the equation for a minute. Who else comes to mind as a favorite for you guys?
Well, I mean, I know for me, and again, I speak more as a fan of the cartoons from the 90s, and I've seen some other things other than that, but that's the main thing. And Krang was a big part of those cartoons, and I always enjoyed Krang.
I have to agree with you. Krang is, I think what is for me, because I think Krang was almost a joke at times. He kind of got screwed over, but it was such a unique looking villain. You got this little like brain from another dimension,
gigantic bubble gum.
This giant. That's it. Yeah, exactly. It kind of looks like chewed up bubble gum, and he gets inside this like weird giant robot looking creature, and all of a sudden he's like, this robot can do all kinds of stuff, and he's like, it was such a unique look, and I always appreciated the Krang character for the look, if nothing else.
Well, what I liked about the character was that it opened the door to like if you didn't have Krang, you basically just had one ninja who like an evil ninja that had a foot soldier clan that was constantly being thwarted by the Turtles and Splinter, who was his master. So then when you add Krang, this interdimensional, basically space alien in a sense, you open the door to the storyline of being something much bigger than just some weird mutagen in New York City. Now you're talking about opening up portals to other worlds, and obviously Shredder and Krang never seemed to really get along, but there always seemed to be a little bit of fear that Shredder had because he knew that Krang
had access to Dimension X.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
if Krang left to his own devices, could easily overtake Shredder and the Foot Soldiers.
Yeah. Shredder wasn't an idiot. He knew, he was a very intelligent villain. He knew where his boundaries were. So we got Krang, we got Shredder. Who else? Who else is on your guys' list?
So for me, after Krang and Shredder, I feel like those are automatics. I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit, just because I feel like not a lot of people talk about her. But the same way as Shredder and the whole the seated hatred between him and Yamada Yoshi, Splinter, Karai, who is the biological daughter of Splinter when he was obviously a human. I always liked that character because it once again that was the most interesting part of the story to me, was this dynamic between Yoshi and Saki. Kind of they never really fought against each other. They always just kind of sent their underlings to do what they felt was the right thing to do. And Karai, who was kidnapped by Saki and then trained, or I'll also say Shredder, was kidnapped by Shredder and then trained and kind of brainwashed to say that Splinter was a bad person, and then later finding out that that's actually her father. It just creates more important plot devices. Whether it's just like, okay, this is going on, and the Turtles thwart the Foot Clan again, and just your normal episodes. This actually creates kind of like this side plot of like actual struggle between a girl who is evil because she was raised to be that way, but you kind of feel bad for her because you know who she really is. And so I've always liked her as a villain. I know she ultimately becomes kind of good because she kind of falls in love with Leonardo, but for a while she was a badass that really could take on all four Turtles at once.
Yeah, I can't speak on her at all. I have not watched the newer Ninja Turtles iterations, and I think she was in the newer movies as well at some point. Is that right? And I haven't seen those either, so I have no say on her either way. But it sounds like she's got a pretty good story arc with the Ninja Turtles, so I'll give you
she's
there.
definitely in the new she's in Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, and I don't know much either, but I will give you the fact that the kid thing always goes over well. I feel like in every comic book, in every huge comic book arc, that like happens. So, and it's always good. So,
and it's always good to have a female. And I always love the female antagonist. I don't know why, but it just seemed like you have April, who in the movies, I don't think, or really in most of the iterations, she's not really considered much of a role player. She's just kind of the damsel in distress, maybe a little bit of like communication, kind of helping the turtles in the back, in the background. But then you have Karai, who is like the exact opposite. She's in the fray. She's going toe to toe, and for the most part, able to take on any of the turtles, whenever she wants to. Until I think later on in the cartoon, like April finds out she has psychic abilities and telekinesis. It all gets really weird. But Karai, it was cool to finally have like a real strong female character in the series.
Well, there you go. And we kind of got to end our segment here. We've got plenty more show to go, but I just got to say, don't forget to go to our Twitter at PseudoNerdPod. We'll have a list up there of our favorite villains. You can vote, and then of course we'll have an other category as our fourth option, which go ahead and respond, because obviously you've got the Rat King, you've got Leatherface, maybe you're a Bebop and Rocksteady fan. Or maybe you like the Rock Soldiers from Dimension X, or some other villain, maybe from just a comic or a random episode. Baxter Stockman, I don't think I mentioned him just now. Plenty of options. I'd like to hear your guys' input as well. So get out there on the Twitter and vote for your favorite TMNT villain, and we'll, of course, give the results of that poll in our next 90-minute episode.
Did we say the name of our handle again?
At PseudoNerdPod. Okay, now let's. We've discussed the gameplay. We've kind of discussed the background of the game and all things Ninja Turtles. So let's get into our overall thoughts and rate the game. And let's just start with, what did you guys like about the game? What stood out to you as some of your favorite things about the game?
I know me personally, and maybe it's because I've never really played miniature games, but and maybe this is a common thing, but I like the simplicity of it. I liked how quick it was to pick up. We did watch the 40-minute video about the rules that you had sent out, so maybe that kind of helped a little bit. But even watching that, my thought process the whole time was, oh, okay, that's pretty simple. That makes sense. That's pretty easy. So I really liked that there was a lot going on in the game, but it wasn't too overwhelming, and everything was simplified as much as it could, or as much as it could be.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those games that if you have at least one player at the table who has played it before, you could pretty much spend 10 or 15 minutes getting the basics explained to the rest of the group. And, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to have a couple moments that happen during the game, like, oh, what do you do here? You might have to refer to the book. Like, what is it? Oh, okay, that's what you do. Or this is how it's, written out there. And sometimes you might need to make a judgment call. But outside of that, like you said, it's pretty quick to pick up, and fairly, simplistic game from a rule standpoint. It's not too over the top, and there's plenty of those games out there that have just so many rules and so many scenarios and things like that take place. And you're like, okay, if A happens, I got to do this, but if B happens, I got to do that, and if C happens, I got to do this. Here, it's much more straightforward. So I agree. It's definitely an easy game to pick up, and probably a good introductory game to miniatures, because it was that way for us.
What I liked the most about it was, even though it's a 2 to 5, we did it as 3. I mean, technically, as far as the actions that were made, it felt kind of like a one-on-one, just because I was more or less more of an advisor to Haddix while he was the one screwing up all the rolls. But what I liked about it was you could easily play this game with two people. I mean, there's nothing that restricts anything by just playing with two people, but it increases I think it becomes more fun when you add more. There's a lot of games where there's almost like a sweet spot of how many players you want to have play a certain game. There's a lot of like, though, you can as little as 2, as many as 8. But I've seen games like that where you play with 2 and it's just not as fun as playing with 4, or 8, or 6, or whatever. This game is actually not that bad with just the two of you being at the board and playing. But obviously the dynamic of the game doesn't really change when you add more people, but it just creates more discussion, more strategy, more minds. Obviously, more people probably button heads as far as decisions are made. But ultimately, everybody's taking over the role of a turtle, and that's their job. So really, there might be a little bit of strategy, but in the end, you're rolling for your character. So no matter what, you can strategize all you want. A lot of the game has to do with the luck of the roll, and when you have people like Haddix who are going to screw up every time he frickin' throws a dice, it's nice to have a couple other people that are getting their hands on the dice instead of him.
Please, dude.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, you can get as into the role playing aspect of this game as you want to. We didn't really do that. We played it pretty much straightforward. But if you wanted to, if you're one of those type of people that I want to get into my character, and let's say you have one guy playing the villain, each person playing a turtle. Maybe you got Raphael, the one guy playing Raphael, and everyone's like, okay, Raph, we want you to go here. You're like, you know what? I'm going to do what Raph does. I'm just going to go over here and fight. And it's your total prerogative to do that. So
and his action dice are set up for that perfectly too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. I think they did a good job of incorporating the personalities of each turtle. It's not like if I pick Donatello or I pick Leonardo, I'm getting the same turtle. No, they all have different abilities, different attributes, and they are related to the character accordingly. Like you said, Raph has 6 action dice compared to everyone else's 3, and that's because he can't share with others because he doesn't play well. That said, I know we only played 2 scenarios, but I felt like the combat felt fairly even. The turtles by far were stronger than any of the little Foot Clan soldiers I had, or thugs and little gunners and stuff like that. But that would make perfect sense, as far as the comic goes. Like, a couple Foot Clan guys are gonna get beat up by the turtles, but where I lacked strength as the villain, I made up in numbers, and I thought that was a good balance between the turtles and villain, because in theory, if I have one Foot Clan soldier going up against Leonardo, the Foot Clan soldier is not going to win that fight. But if I have 4 Foot Clan soldiers up against Leonardo, now we're talking. And I think that they do a good job of making it realistic, keeping it true to the lore of the comic, while also making it fair for a game and not making it too one-sided.
I don't know. I always saw Leonardo taking on like 4 or 5 at a time and having no problem. So I don't know.
And and we also didn't get into too many of the villain leaders, which could make a big difference. I didn't even look at Shredder. What his attack card looks like. What his, for all I know, his strength is 5 and his defense is 8 or something crazy. I don't know what it is, but I will be interested to see how it is going forward. That said, there's only X amount of scenarios in the game. The nice thing is every scenario can be played out differently. There's a ton of replayability with this game. If I don't get the right cards in that first round and I can't run away with those guys, you know what? I might have to sit there and fight, or you guys might be able to surround me. There's plenty of different ways to play it out, and every game, depending on even who's at the table and how the dice are rolled, every scenario can play out differently, and I really think it opens the game to be played a lot of times in a bunch of different ways. I don't know if you guys, you think that's the same, you agree with me or not there.
Oh, like I said earlier, I think if we went back and played the exact same scenarios we played, whether it be card luck or bad luck on your side, or just Kyle and I knowing the game better, I think we would have done significantly better. Just because, again, having Donatello sit behind a air conditioned because we didn't give them any movement speed or anything like that. It's just stuff like that strategy changes per scenario. So if you play it multiple times, you get better and slowly try to perfect it.
Absolutely, and I do think the game, we've stressed this a few times, it does a good job of kind of hand-holding and letting you learn the aspects of the game as each scenario goes on, which is always good. It doesn't throw you right into the fire like I have no idea what I'm doing or I feel overwhelmed. It does a good job of kind of just easing you all into it.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say as far as the handholding, and I think you said it somewhere in the rundown we have here, but I think of it a lot too is that as long as you have somebody who's very very keen on the rules, someone who can at least make a ruling on things, kind of like when you go to an MTG tournament, you always have that one guy that's there to make sure that nobody's doing any kind of illegal moves, and you have a judge that kind of makes that ultimate decision. I think as long as you have one guy that has a really good concept of the rules and the way the game is played, it makes the whole game go by much smoother. So I don't think it's required that everybody has to be experts at this game to do well, because I think the decisions being made and the actions being done are not the difficult part. I think that the difficult part is making sure that that the game is going in the right speed, the right direction, and that's why it's good to have it. As long as you have that one guy that is there to make sure that any questions can be answered.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of goes. I feel like that's good for most games. Having that one rules expert, and then everyone else can kind of I think I can do this right, and then yep, you can, or no, you can't. So it is nice to have that at least one person who kind of has some idea about the game, and we play through a couple of scenarios before you play with a totally new group. That said, was there anything you guys disliked about the game?
Well, I mean, any kind of game that involves dice rolling or drawing cards, you could be as smart or as good as you can be. Lady Luck might not be on your side. I mean, we went through that first game where you just seemed like you just drew the perfect cards for that scenario to get out of there in 3 turns, and that just seemed like. I guess that can happen sometimes. I hope that's not. Once again, we only did 2 scenarios. There's not enough of a sample set. But once you introduce that your actions being made still have chance involved, that might rub some people the wrong way. But obviously, that's how you equalize people who are really good at the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those that can be a negative or it can be a positive depending on what kind of player you are. For just those reasons, because if it's too much luck, then you're one of those that's like, well, I had this perfect strategy and it went down the toilet because I didn't draw any of the cards I needed or my dice didn't roll my way. But at the same time, it's like, it kind of helps balance out. It makes it fun to play with people who might not be as strategically minded or of sound ability with these type of games. So. It's kind of I can understand it being a negative and to some people being a positive. For me, one of the biggest, downsides to the game is the first 2 scenarios. I wasn't crazy about the objectives. I understand the reasoning behind them, and this probably would no longer be a negative if we played more of this game. They were just the villain's objective was very easy to achieve if the right cards were drawn, and I drew the right cards, so it ended quickly without much fuss from a combat end. So I hope further scenarios have and I looked at the next one that we were going to play, and they're much more involved and not a run out the door and you win the game kind of thing. So it's kind of a minor annoyance at best, but worth mentioning anyways. And again, we only played 2 scenarios, so hard to make too much of a fuss about that. The one other thing that might be worth mentioning, at least that I thought of, is if you play with 5 players, every player is only playing with 1 turtle. And if you're the first turtle to go, you're waiting a while until you play again. Now, that may be a positive, maybe a negative. I wouldn't say it's a positive, but it may not be a negative for you if you and your team are very involved. So like you and Haddix were turtles, and you guys were playing well with each other, discussing everyone's action, and it was almost like you guys just played as the Turtles as a whole, as opposed to Kyle, you were playing Donatello and Michelangelo, and Haddix was playing Raphael and Donatello or something like that. Now, if you were each playing one individual turtle and you're waiting for everybody else to go and you're just kind of sitting there could be some downtime. So it's worth mentioning. Again, if you have a fun group and you guys are all involved on every player's turn, that's not going to be an issue.
Well, I feel like that's not too much of an issue because depending on how everybody, I feel like everybody, if you're going to be successful as the Turtles, the decisions on movement has to be kind of in rhythm with everybody else. You can't just go wherever you want to go and not really kind of talk amongst your teammates to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go here and create a choke point. Okay, I'm going to go here. I understand that you're controlling your own turtle, but at the same time, you're working together to finish an objective. So I understand the idea of like, yeah, don't have the TV on in the background where like, okay, I did my turn. I'm going to go sit on the couch and watch TV or go pull out my phone and fuss around and not pay attention. This is definitely a game where that is very, very detrimental. If you're not paying attention to the moves, especially the moves that are being made by the bad guy, whoever is playing the evil guy every other turn. So there's definitely a lot to watch and pay attention to.
That's a good point, yeah, because even though you might not be attacking or moving anymore, you might be getting attacked. So you could be involved, throughout the rest of the round. That said, any other downsides, on your end that you guys could say? I don't think setup. I think it's worth mentioning. Setup doesn't take terribly too long. There's a lot of little pieces, little cardboard pieces and stuff, but they're just there as enhancements to the game. They're not really there for setup, so you don't have to worry about too much little piece setup. So setup's going to take 5 to 10 minutes, I think, for each scenario, but it's not that bad or intrusive.
I feel like if you really, were either annoyed by the cardboard pieces or lost them, I mean, you could have easily kept track of life on a piece of paper. Same with focus and hit points and all that kind of. You know what I mean?
Like pizza. So.
Well, there you go. So I think that if that kind of stuff did bother you, you could do it other ways, or if you lost it, you could do it other ways. So.
Or you can always make a digital version of the game, which obviously everybody would rather want. Anyways, am I right, gentlemen?
No, in this case, I would not.
I was going to say I like the miniatures here. It makes me feel like I'm actually kind of playing with little Ninja Turtles and I'm having a little fight with things and kind of I can visualize and really look and see where everything's at. So, no, I think I prefer the physical in a game like this. That said, if you guys don't have anything else that you dislike or want to mention about that, we can kind of move into our ratings and recommendation.
No, I think my dislikes would be your guys's. Like, for instance, in that second scenario where you like rolled an 8 and just got off the board because you were immune to but again, randomization. So
yeah, so you're going to have some of that, and hopefully the scenarios further on will change and get harder and avoid having those kind of endings too.
Yes, exactly.
So that said, what do you guys, scale of 1 to 10, what are you putting it at? And who would you recommend this game to?
I think it's tough because we only did the 2 scenarios. But giving it a little bit of credit that would get better, which I think that's pretty fair to say. I think I would give it a 7, and that's for people who really enjoy this type of game. And it helps if you're a Turtles fan. I think if you like the miniature style game, you'll like this game. I think it's very well designed and not too crazy. If you like the Turtles as well as that, I think it boosts the game up a little bit. Maybe it's a 7.5 to you at that point. But I think as a miniature game goes, I thought it was a 7.
To me, I think the bell curve on this is how much time are you willing to devote to playing it. If this is like bring people over and hang out for like an hour to play a game, then I give this like a 6.5 at best. But the score of this gets astronomically higher if this is one of those bring over some pizzas and Mountain Dew, your 12-pack of Mountain Dew, and just rock this for like 6 hours and go through as much of the scenario as possible. Get yourself immersed into it. This easily can be a game that you just lose track of time doing. And if that's the kind of game you're looking for, I think this game could be closer to an 8.5 and 9.
I think that's a great point, Kyle. It's definitely a game that you're going to want to spend an evening playing through a bunch of scenarios. If you come over and you're like, let's play a game of Taboo and play a game of Pictionary, and let's bust out a scenario in Ninja Turtles. It's not that type of game. You're not going to want to do that, and you're not going to enjoy playing just one scenario. You really need to kind of spend some time playing into it. So I kind of agree with that. I think I'm at about a 6.5 and 7. Assuming the scenarios get better, I could put it more to the 7.5 and 8. Definitely a fun game, an easy one to learn, and I think I recommend it for anybody that enjoys miniatures, but also is a fan of the Ninja Turtle series. Now that said, Board Game Geek currently rating of it is an 8.0 out of 10, with over 400 ratings on that. So getting high praises over there at Board Game Geek. And for those of you who enjoy this type of game, you want to play, something else like it. Expansions are on the way. The April O'Neil expansion is already out. It came out in February. You got an exclusive April O'Neil sculpted miniature. She's got her own action dice, more hero cards, special abilities for her, a new adventure comic with 4 new battle scenarios. And there's an announcement that Casey Jones and other expansions are coming in the future. So still a lot of new content coming out for this game. So if you enjoyed the first one, there's plenty more coming out your way. That said, if you want to play something else outside the Ninja Turtles realm, Descent: Journeys into the Dark, miniature style combat game by Kevin Wilson. There's a Ghostbusters game if you kind of just like the old nostalgia, but that one has not got as nearly as highly rated at Board Game Geek, and I've read some bad reviews on it. So maybe we'll hold off on that.
It's also a lot cheaper too, though. That's definitely a budget game.
Yeah, and I think it's cheaper because it didn't go over so well. And one more I'll tell you about is Doom the board game, also a creation of Kevin Wilson. Different missions and operations. It's currently at an 8.0 out of 10 at Board Game Geek, and it's about $70 on the internet. So a couple of those, plenty of others that you can find online in the miniature style game. And as always, if you guys have your recommendations that you think, for us, now we play this miniature game, maybe there's some others that you think that we absolutely need to play, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, on Twitter. Let us know go to pseudonerdpod.com. Find all of our social media accounts. Let us know what kind of miniature games we should play, or if you like our board game reviews, let us know what board games you want us to play and review, and we'll always open to doing that in the future as we go forward in our board game revolution.
We're still on that.
We will always be on that.
More like digital board game revolution.
Yeah. Well, if you want to watch more of the streams where they're not board games, always feel free to follow Hoagie as he streams through World of Warcraft, Legend of Zelda, and other games. Now you're on a new format, Kyle. What is the new format that you're at? You're no longer on Twitch or YouTube?
Right now I'm located at beam.pro /pseudonerdstream.
There you go. And you are streaming Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 6:30 Pacific time?
Yep, that's correct.
All right, there you go. And that's going to be it for us this week. Don't forget, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 came out today, and it will be the focus of our next 90-minute podcast here in 2 weeks. So go watch it and get ready for us. I know I'm excited for it. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to it as well.
Oh, I can't wait. My tickets are Friday.
There you go. That said, from the Great Lakes to the Golden Gate and from the University of Missouri, I am Josh Kaiser. He is Josh Haddix, and he is Kyle Hoagland. And we will see you guys next time.
Have a good Friday.
Donatello does machines. See ya.